Welcome to another edition of Mississippi Stories. I'm your host, Marshall Ramsey, editor-at-large and editorial cartoonist with Mississippi Today. Needless to say, you can tell the background's a little bit different today. It's really a very special edition of Mississippi Stories because I'm very, very proud to be able to interview Colonel Cynthia Smith, who is the commander of the 186th Air Refueling Wing here, Key Field Air National Guard Base in Meridian, Mississippi. So you're probably asking, how did you end up in Meridian, Mississippi, getting to interview Colonel Smith? Well, there was a really cool thing. Y'all probably noticed this if you stuck your head out the window a few days ago. It was the 100th anniversary of in-flight air refueling. All across the nation, National Guard units flew in formation, and just happened to be because in Mississippi we have two fantastic planes here, and with our Air Guard units we have both the KC-135 here in Meridian and the C-17 transport cargo plane in Jackson, and so they flew in formation. And so I just decided to do a little drawing of it, and it caught the Colonel's eye, and so that's why we're here today. Colonel Smith, thank you so much for hosting me today and letting me get to meet the team. It's been a huge honor for me.
We're delighted to have you visit. And we saw the picture that you drew, a depiction of that 135 in formation with the C-17 with our boom down. It was great.
That was amazing.
Exactly what we did.
And I got to meet the pilot. I was pretty stoked about that. She's been flying for 10 years, and I found out from you that they didn't have air conditioning that day too.
That's right.
So they definitely took one for the team that day.
Yes.
But it was great because I posted it on social media, and there were so many people that posted back pictures. And I think the thing that made me happy was that it really gave the Guard the kind of recognition that it deserves and it needs here in the state of Mississippi.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the driving motive behind the entire flyby that was planned nationwide and at some of our overseas locations to celebrate this anniversary, was really to connect with the public, let them know what we do, and to kind of emphasize how important this refueling mission is to projecting our power for any future engagement that we may be faced with.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things obviously nationally and internationally that are on the horizon, and y'all are going to be a big part of it. The Guard has always been, particularly since the Gulf War, has been a huge part of the backbone of the readiness of the U.S. military.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your story, and we'll touch on what the unit does here, because the thing that amazed me when I was doing a little bit of homework, and for years I've driven to Atlanta, back and forth from Jackson to Atlanta, and I always kind of turn my head and check out the giant planes sitting there and everything, but y'all do so much here on this base. And so I want you to talk about that, but talk about you for a second too, because you have now risen up obviously in the leadership ranks, and of course you're doing the job here as well, but you started out going to Delta State, to go through commercial aviation school up there, and thought of being a pilot and everything else. And so it's amazing. And what I think is so funny, because when you're a pilot, you can live all around the world, but you're from Meridian.
That's right.
You literally have ended back right here where you came from.
That's very special to me.
Yeah.
Delta State, great university, great flying program, the only one we had in the state. So, I went all the way from Meridian and traversed all these great lands to make it up to the Delta. And it was there during that program that I met a professor of mine, Mr. Tommy Sledge, who at the time was full-time professor but part-time pilot in the Jackson unit when they flew C-5s. And he's the one that told me what the Guard was and that I had one in my hometown, because it's so funny you mentioned that you drive past this unit on the interstate each day. That's exactly what I had done my entire life and never had a clue what it was that they did here. Once I found out about it, came and visited the base. Amazing journey since then. You did ask about what we do now.
Yes.
And of course, with the tankers, we have the refueling mission.
Yeah.
And that does serve, our mission statement is to provide agile combat support and rapid global mobility to our state and our nation. And there's a lot of pieces of that, because the mobility piece, obviously we're enabling fighters, cargo aircraft to project over vast expanses of water that just wouldn't be possible without us. But also we have an ability to carry cargo within our aircraft, and we also have the ability to put in litters and carry patients to do air medical evacuation. We provide that support both in our federal role and we've used it for domestic response as well, in light of natural disasters or other occurrences that the governor calls upon us.
Yeah, you've of course this base is kind of interesting. The aircraft. I was just walking down the hall looking at all the different airplanes that have been here throughout the years. You've had everything from fighters to cargo planes to reconnaissance planes to now you've got the tanker mission. But it seems very appropriate that this is a tanker base, considering of the history with the Key brothers and their historic flight. In fact, their plane Ole Miss is in the Smithsonian. That's how famous their flight was, and it happened right here. So it just seems to be natural that this is a tanker base now.
Oh yeah, it was when we first in the early '90s were told that we were transitioning from the F4s, which I know that you plan to visit later. The static display of that right outside our gate, into the KC-135s and the refueling mission. The connection was instantly made with the namesake of this field, the Key Field, named after Alan Fred Key, who did launch and set an endurance record at the time, 27-day flight. But what it also involved...
I've done that flying from Atlanta, but that's because of delays.
27-day flight required 438 air refueling contacts. And wow. It wasn't smooth sailing. That was actually their third attempt. The first two were unsuccessful. And we just celebrated the 100th anniversary, the first time that air refueling was accomplished, but there were a lot of things still to work out and perfect.
Yeah.
And A.D. Hunter, a local engineer here in Meridian, who, by the way, only had a 9th grade education, was the mechanical genius that designed the valve that the Key brothers used to accomplish that refueling. And basically, it was spill-free, and it opened a valve once it made the connection. And do you know that is still, with only minor modifications, the valve that's used today and is on the KC-135? So that refueling mission and the pioneering days having started here, essentially, and coming back to our field has got great significance.
Yeah, and I apologize if I'm geeking out about airplanes too. The KC-135 is not a brand new airplane. I mean, it's been flying for years. In fact, it was the very first American jetliner. The 707 is the platform it's built off of. So it's tried and true. I mean, my father-in-law even flew one in Vietnam. So they've been around a long time, but that's not the same plane that he flew, because it has new engines and everything else on that. But that's how good of a plane it is. It's still going.
It's still going, and man, it's a beautiful airplane. You know that adage, they don't make them like they used to. That absolutely holds true, at least in my heart, with these airplanes that now I've been flying since the late 90s, early 2000s. It's got a special place in my heart. The ones out on our ramp, initially we had some late 50s models.
Oh, wow. And
then early 60s models. I think we still may have a 50s era tanker out on our ramp today, but they are very well maintained. Our maintenance group out here, and constantly being inspected. They are beginning to show their age though, so we're looking forward to hopefully in the future upgrading to a next generation air refueling platform.
Yeah, that's the KC-46.
The KC-46 Pegasus, that's right.
Yeah, so, but the thing is, and I remember reading the article about it, I mean, you've got facilities here that a lot of guard bases don't. You've got really nice hangars and everything else. It says Sonny Montgomery Field on the thing for a reason, because, I mean, Sonny Montgomery was so good to this base for so many years when he was our congressman.
To this base.
And to the whole guard, yeah.
Actually, it touches every military member.
About to say
the Montgomery GI Bill.
Exactly.
I mean, everyone recognizes that name. So, yes. He holds a special place in our heart as well, and what he was able to facilitate for Key Field when we transitioned to the KC-135 and the construction of a hangar that essentially allows 2 of our jets to be parked wingtip to wingtip inside one hangar space, and that's a huge asset that we have going forward in consideration for being selected for the bed down of the next KC-46s.
Talk about you for a second, then we'll talk a little bit more about the unit and some of the things that you've done and some of the things that go on here. But I mean, you wanted to go into aviation, and I always love talking to pilots because they always have a moment when they knew they wanted to become a pilot. It was usually, I mean, I was talking with General Maxie Phillips, who he flew out of this base at one point and was over the the base in Jackson before he retired. But he said as a kid, he'd be out plowing the field and look up and we'd see the T6 trainers flying over all the time. And he said, I want to do that. What was your moment? When did you know that you wanted to fly?
Well, it wasn't really an airplane. It was a shuttle.
Oh, yeah.
So my teacher, Mr. Daniel Alexander, taught at Meridian High, and he was on the short list to be on the Challenger.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, he wasn't selected, but I remember that for the longest time, anytime we were in his class, anything NASA would be playing on the TV. And nobody had ever told me that there was something that you couldn't do.
Yeah.
If you tried, or if you had the right stuff and you put your mind to it. So I think like a lot of kids back in the 90s, decided I was going to be an astronaut. And when that struck me, everyone told me, you got to be a pilot first before you can fly a shuttle. And that's when I found out about Delta State and the aviation program. So I've never been to space, but but I wouldn't say that this career turned out too shabby.
No, it turned out well. Did you ever think you'd be sitting in that office over there running a base?
Absolutely not.
No?
No.
Have you enjoyed it though?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you work with really good people. I got to meet some of your team today, and it's been really great. And I think a lot of people sometimes in Mississippi forget that the Guard is their neighbors. It's the people they see at the grocery store. It's their friends, and that's the beauty of it. It's like people that literally they put on the uniform and they serve, and then they turn around and they get back out and make their communities run.
Agreed. I would say that never hit home more than right after 9/11 when the unit was activated and we forward deployed to Incirlik, Turkey. But when I showed up, my roommate was a high school Spanish teacher.
Really?
But she was an intelligence analyst in the base at the time. And in the room next to us, there were nurses, airline pilots, engineers, all walks of life. That had come together. We've been activated. This is what we had trained for.
Yeah. Recently, you were on part of a big exercise that, if anybody's paid attention to, obviously there's the war going on in Ukraine. It was kind of NATO's chance to be able to show the Russians, hey, don't mess with us a little bit. There were a lot of aircraft involved, and y'all were a big part of getting the airplanes from the United States over to Europe.
Yeah, the Air National Guard really was the U.S. Air Force support role for that exercise that Germany led, and it went a long way, lessons learned and reassurance of our NATO allies, and also projecting a force that hopefully is a deterrent to any future incursions. But we got to participate not only in the air bridge that we just talked about, projecting that power that got the assets over to Europe and brought them back, but we also had some guys on the ground during the exercise that engaged in some of the scenarios that they practiced there.
And you personally got to go too.
And I personally
so you got to have some fun because you still enjoy it.
And I didn't even take my laptop with me. It was fantastic. Great to be a crew dog for a little bit.
And when you're not in charge of this organization, you're in charge at home too. You've got two great kids. Your husband's in the military as well. So you're a very, very busy person, to say the least.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about something, because like I said, obviously when you drive by, you see the big jets, and that's what you think of when here, and you see the helicopters also nearby. But y'all do a lot of different things here. There's a lot of different units that are based here. Tell us about some of the other things that happen in Meridian.
We do. So I'll start with the 186 Air Operations Group, which in layman's terms is basically an assembly of experts that can be liaisons. After 9/11, there has to be a command and control center that stood up, that runs 24 hours. And if that's kept up for a long period of time, you need reinforcements. You need some support augmentees. And that's when they begin to create something like that in the Guard, where you get seasoned members who know their skill set so well that they can backfill for this active duty.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, ours backfills for 1st Air Force, NORAD NORTHCOM, that protects us all. And it kind of changed. At first, it was sort of Homeland Defense, but then after Katrina, it also became evident that we needed something for domestic operations as well, when they have to stand up some EOCs or command and control centers for that. So that's our Air Operations Group. They're doing great things. I'm extremely proud of them. We also have two other units that belong under Air Combat Command, and that's the 238th Air Support Operations Squadron, which has, just like the unit itself has changed missions and changed designations over time, but right now they provide support to the 155 Armored Combat Brigade team, and they're basically the Air Force liaisons on the ground, you know, calling in and directing the air support for our ground forces. And so we've got some of those guys deployed as we speak, so they're doing great work. And the highest decorated Air National Guard unit in the state.
Oh, wow.
Those guys have done some fantastic work. And finally, our 248th Air Traffic Control Squadron. We run the tower here. Believe it or not, Meridian is Mississippi's busiest airport.
Really?
We're talking about number of operations, so every approach counts. So, you know, you have a lot of training bases from Naval Air Station Meridian, which has their jet training there in Columbus, Mississippi. We have our tankers here and the helicopters, civilian and commercial traffic. So it's a unique mix of types of air traffic, and it's constant. So those guys, actually they had the #1 civilian air traffic controller in all of the Guard this past year. They do fantastic work here. So they can run and construct a tower in an austere location and do these same operations downrange, just like they control here at Keyfield. So if you've ever flown out of Meridian or into Meridian, you were cleared to taxi or land by one of our guys here.
Tell us a little bit, obviously, as you're evolving from being a pilot into leadership roles and everything. Who have been some of your mentors when it comes to leadership, and what's your philosophy?
Well, you know what's unique about mentors is they can be a peer, they can be a subordinate, they can be a superior. They come from all walks of life too. And I remember one in particular, and it was a boom operator, that what stood out for me was his work ethic, his character, and his genuine compassion for people. Chuck Smith was his name. He's since retired, but he has a special place in my heart for guiding me in those early years when I was first selected from among just the line pilots to take my first level of command, which is squadron command. I actually had many long talks with him about, well, what should I do and what should I be thinking about here? So that would be a great example. I've had so many though. I wouldn't want to begin a list because I'd be sure to leave someone off. But
put on your recruiter hat for a second. Look at the camera, and there's somebody watching right now that may be thinking about joining the Guard. Why should they join the Guard?
Oh, you should join the Guard because the intrinsic rewards of serving your country and working with a team and learning the core values that we have in the Air Force, they can only serve to benefit you and basically everyone around you. Not only that, but the cool things we get to do. I grew up here in Meridian, and at the time when I went to college, Delta State was about the furthest I'd ever traveled, and now I've traveled the world several times over and done so side by side with people who I now consider family, because the Guard doesn't have the turnover of active duty or even really some companies that you may work for out there. There are folks out here who 30, close to 40 years before they retire. So you can be in a cockpit sitting next to a dear friend watching the sunrise over Europe, and how can you beat that?
It's a pretty good deal, and the food's good too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's all about the snacks, right? It's all about the snacks. Is there anything I haven't touched on that you'd like me to add? Because I mean, like I said, your career has been fascinating, and it's been fun kind of watching you work up the ranks and everything. And by the way, you have one of the coolest offices ever. Looks like she has screens everywhere and all kinds of great challenge coins everywhere and really neat pictures and so forth. But I mean, really, thank you for inviting me over and getting to meet your team. And it's meant a lot to me just getting to meet them a little bit. The drawing was great. I'm glad I got to do that, but I'm really glad it meant a lot to you.
Do we want to show that?
No, sure, it's right there. We can do that. We know people.
Okay, this is the drawing being spoke of. It shows the KC-135, and that's the C-17 out of our unit over in Jackson, the 172nd Airlift Wing behind it. So this is, can we get that?
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you for putting it up on your social media platforms because of the reach you got, because it's no secret that today veterans comprise less than 1% of the American population, and more people, it just seems like the military's those people, and that's not the case with the Guard. Like, we're members of the community, but there are still so many that don't know what we do, and you helped with that.
Oh, it's like I said, as they say at a certain restaurant where they give you chicken sandwiches, it was my pleasure as well. Well, I tell you what, we'll just wrap up here. This has been fantastic, and I will put some links in the video so they can find out more, a little bit about what y'all do, and a little bit more about you as well.
Well, then you get this. Your first challenge coin.
Amazing.
Well, maybe not, probably not your first.
But definitely, and also, if you get one from a colonel, that means that'll do well at a bar, right?
Thank you so much.
Somebody else will buy the beer for me.
Well,
That's the legend of a challenge.
We'll go try it out.
But also too, I will treasure this. Thank you, because I understand what's behind it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I appreciate it. Hey, thank you for watching. And of course, you can go to MississippiToday.org to see past episodes of Mississippi Stories. Or if you'd like to watch this one again, you can always click, and we have great coverage and, of course, some okay cartoons as well. Hey, thank you for watching, and click the like button if you liked it, and we'll catch you next time here on Mississippi Stories. Thank you for watching this episode of Mississippi Stories. Make sure to subscribe to the Mississippi Today YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified every time a new video uploads.